President-elect Donald Trump is filling key roles in his administration roughly 2 months ahead of Inauguration Day. Sources tell CBS News that Trump is expected to announce Stephen Miller as the White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. Miller currently serves as Trump's top immigration advisor. Trump has also tapped Congresswoman Elise Stefanik to be U.S. ambassador to the UN. A senior source close to the presidential transition team says the New York Republican and House Republican conference chair has accepted the offer. The Senate is likely to confirm her when the GOP takes control next year. Additionally, the president-elect has called on Tom Homan to serve as his so-called border czar. During Trump's first presidency, Homan was the acting U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director. He also received the Presidential Rank Award while leading ICE's deportation branch under President Obama back in 2015. In an interview with Cecilia Vega on 60 Minutes last month, he defended Trump's mass deportation plan.
I hear a lot of people say, the talk of a mass deportation is racist, it's threatening to the immigrant community. It's not threatening to the immigrant community. It should be threatening to the illegal immigrant community. But on the heels of historic illegal immigration crisis, that has to be done.
CBS News campaign reporter Libby Cathey is in West Palm Beach, Florida for us following all of these developments. Libby, first, let's talk about Stephen Miller. What can we expect him to do as Trump's Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy?
Yeah, good afternoon, Lindsay, from West Palm Beach, where Trump transition meetings are well underway across the bay behind me at Mar-a-Lago. And here at CBS News, we are learning some of the names coming out of those meetings. One of those is Stephen Miller for Deputy White House Chief of Staff of Policy. Now, what will he do in this role? He will have a close ear to President-elect Donald Trump and to the incoming Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, as they start to implement these campaign policies that Trump campaigned and won on, one of those being mass deportations. Now, Stephen Miller was an advisor to immigration during Trump's first term, somewhat of a controversial figure at times because of the hardline stance he took on immigration. Also a speechwriter, so we expect him to be part of the messaging as Trump implements these policies to take them. Stephen Miller will take those from the West Wing to the American people. Lindsay.
What can you tell us about Stephen Miller? Because from what I remember, extremely conservative, had some controversial policy ideas. What do we know about him and how he may shape a Trump administration?
Yeah, absolutely. Somewhat of a controversial figure. It's been reported that he is against birthright citizenship, for instance. This is something that's in the Constitution. If you are born in the United States, you have citizenship. This is something that Stephen Miller has been against. You heard him at the RNC make a speech giving that line, America is for Americans only, rather. So this is some of the messaging that Democrats and other immigration advocates worry about. But Stephen Miller has always had these views. He has not hid who he is. And by Trump putting him in this position, it's really elevating that and giving him the go-ahead with some of these policy positions, controversial as they may be, Lindsay.
Let's talk about Trump selecting Tom Homan to oversee the border. Here's what Homan had to say about taking on this role on Fox News, for which he serves as a contributor just this morning.
I'm honored the president asked me to come back and help solve this national security crisis, so I'm looking forward to it. Every morning I get up. Every morning I'm pissed off about what this administration did to the most secure border in my lifetime. So I'm going to go back and do what I can to fix it.
Do we know how he intends to successfully implement this mass deportation plan? And also, has he mentioned at all the fact that we do know that right now we are not seeing those record levels at the border that we were once seeing during the Biden administration?
Yeah, Lindsay, some of that has been posed to Homan by 60 Minutes' Cecilia Vega, as there are still a lot of questions at how these mass deportations would be implemented. Now, how much would this cost? Do they have the infrastructure to do this? Right now, ICE does not. So here's the thing. With a Republican Congress coming in, both on the Senate and potentially on the House side, it's going to be a lot easier for Tom Homan to get the resources he needs to begin these mass deportations, to have the resource to do it. Although, as you mentioned, there are still a lot of questions on how that would be carried out. But Tom Homan, he had a career in ICE, not only being ICE director in Trump's first term, but having a role in ICE in Obama's second term, and really starting his career as a police officer and then being a Customs Border Patrol agent on the ground, now moving through the ranks. If there was anyone to handle these mass deportations, it would be Tom Homan. He's really made a career out of it, although there's still many questions about it, Lindsay.
What names are being floated for other roles in Trump's cabinet?
Yeah, a lot of names being floated, right? And that's why we are here in West Palm to try to get some of those names as they come out. I will mention Elise Stefanik for UN ambassador. She has been offered that role, Trump calling her tough and a fighter. She is exactly the type of person he wants on the international stage defending him. She is the highest ranking Republican, female Republican, I should say, House Conference Chair, taking over that position from Liz Cheney, but being rewarded for her loyalty there. Now, some of the other names still being floated, none are official, as Susie Wiles, Stephen Miller, and Elise Stefanik are. But for Secretary of State, for instance, some of the names being floated: Florida Senator Marco Rubio, Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty, he was on Face the Nation yesterday. Also, Rick Grinnell, former Director of National Intelligence for Secretary of State. Now, the list could be beyond that as well. For Secretary of Commerce, Linda McMahon, she was administrator of the Small Business Administration in Trump's first term. She's a mogul with WWE Wrestling. She has reportedly been eyed for that commerce position. For Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe has been waived. So a lot of these positions, a lot of these names out there, the common factor in all of them, Lindsay, is loyalty. These are people that were loyal to the former president through the first term and through his exile here in Mar-a-Lago at the beginning of Biden's first term. So we are starting to get those names coming out, and we will continue to report them live here with you on CBS.
Libby Cathey, thank you.